So this is the heavy boy.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Gear Locker. Today we're going to be going through my after action report of Broken Arrow events on K Pass The Dragon's Back.
Take me home, country road.
Now, this event was, for some, a week-long event that happened from the end of July in 2023 to the first week of August. As always, I would highly recommend listening to this as a podcast, but if you are watching, I will throw some pictures and videos up on the screen periodically. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's start with the equipment that I brought to this event. This one was one of my heaviest years in terms of the amount of stuff that I did bring. However, packing for it was kind of different this year. See, I know that I have all of the stuff that I need as well as plenty of extras, so instead of explicitly counting things, I kind of just put it all together and threw it in my car and went. So I'll estimate for you guys how much I brought of each particular item. Starting with clothing and uniforms, I brought about 10 pairs of undergarments, including socks. Roughly 8 uniform sets were brought along as well, some of them for particular uses, which I'll get into later, and 1 soft cover cap. I brought 1 set of web gear that included 2 M56 magazine pouches, 2 canteen covers, and 2 compass pouches. Beyond that, I had my lightweight rucksack setup, which was very similar to the setup that you've seen in my previous lightweight rucksack video, as well as a 2-quart canteen cover, which I got in the day before the event. Moving beyond the soft items, I had 2 rifles with me. First was my G&P M16A1. I did upgrade the hop-up, although I'll get into it a little bit later. It ended up not working out so well. I brought my upgraded Car 15 that I used at the Mike Force event earlier in July. And I of course had my steel pot helmet. I had 1 extra bandolier, 2 Claymore bags with me, as well as my gas mask pouch. I of course had my 2 ammo cans with me, but I also brought with me 2 of the large ammo crates. Those I used for a couple of different things. One was just general storage in the bunk, but the other was for the PX. I had a few items for sale and ended up selling a decent amount of things, but I set it up this way and you'll see it on screen now. I of course had my cot, my duffel bag, my bug net, as well as my laundry bag. And last but certainly not least, I had my foot locker. For food and water, I brought about 8 gallons with me out initially, but I did need a resupply of 2 gallons later on in the week. I did end with 3 gallons extra, which was great, so I didn't technically need those 2 extra ones, but it was good to have and to be able to share with my bunkmates. In terms of food, I did purchase the Bay meal plan. So I had a bunch of food that was going to be provided for me throughout the week. However, I did bring just enough extra food to have to last me in case that didn't work out for my dietary restrictions or what have you. I had a bunch of canned food that was in my C-Rat box, and I did go through most of it. However, I still had a few cans left over. And for comfort items, I did bring a pillow as well as 2 poncho liners that I used to keep myself warm at night. Now I'm sure I'm forgetting a few things here and there, so please forgive me for that. But if you do have any other particular questions about what I did use at this event, let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to answer them. As I had mentioned, this was a week-long event for me, so I arrived on Sunday in July and left on Sunday in August. Some staff members arrived there as early as Thursday night, but the majority of staff that did arrive early arrived on that Saturday. So when I got there, a good chunk of the base was put up, if not more than half. This included a good selection of GP medium tents that included squad bays, the Bamboo Viper, the mess tent, etc., as well as a good number of GP smalls. So when I arrived there on Sunday, we put up 3 more tents, including a GP medium that had already fallen, as well as 2 GP small tents. That first night was just a work night, so I ended up putting my bunk stuff in an adjacent squad bay because mine hadn't been set up yet, but that was going to happen the next day on Monday. And while we're here, I do want to give a huge shout out to those guys who did show up early that aren't on staff. So Dean Facka and Colin Stewart, you guys are awesome. And Chris Lee, who showed up on Monday, you're a champ too, man. I appreciate all of you guys coming out, especially because Colin Stewart and Chris Lee, they were on Pavin. So while they technically didn't need to show up that early, they were an awesome help and we greatly appreciated their support in putting up our base. Monday included a little bit more tent setup. So we put up a few more tents, including the kitchen tent. Even though we were all pretty tired, we were ready to get that stuff done. So at the end of Monday night, we just kind of relaxed and hung out, and nothing really big happened. Tuesday was the last day that we put up any new tents that were not privately owned by individuals coming later. So we set up the last few tents, we started getting the PX set up, and in fact I believe we opened it on that Tuesday. And then we rounded out the night with watching Batman, which was the 1966 Adam West version, and with that group of people, that was a perfect movie to watch. It was probably one of my favorite nights that was put on by Bay. It was just really funny, and I thoroughly enjoyed that part. By Wednesday, a good chunk of people had shown up, if not on Wednesday, with a lot of the stragglers coming on Thursday and a couple on Friday. So on Wednesday, in addition to more people showing up, that's when we really got into reenactor mode. So we started the final touches, cleaning up the base, making our sweeps, making sure everything started to look nice. It was about by this time that my bunk setup was kind of finished. It did take me a few days to kind of get everything organized, but truthfully, at that point, not many people had fully moved in yet because there was so much going on. So with that, we started addressing chain of command, and the event in terms of realism really started to kick off. However, that was also the last night of pure relaxation. And I mean that not in a bad way, in that I did enjoy and did relax the rest of the nights, but Wednesday was casino night. I'm not gonna lie, at this point in the event, I was beat. I was really tired. I struggled to sleep a little bit a couple of the nights before, so I didn't really participate too much in the poker games with all the prizes that you could win. I did hear great things. I heard a lot of hooting and hollering, which was really cool, really exciting. I wish I was able to go, but I kind of wasn't feeling it. I did get to play Bingo though. I kind of made my own homemade version, and I did play it with some of the Pavin guys, so it was kind of fun. I did get involved a little bit, but not in the full poker scene that a lot of people did get involved in. So if you did go to poker night, let me know in the comments how it was, who won stuff. I know Randy Diamond was pieing for a prize, but I don't think he got it. But regardless, I heard it was a lot of fun, and again, if it was the same as last year and the same will be next year, it'll be good stuff. So Thursday was a particularly different day for me. While a lot of the same things did happen in terms of guard duty and respecting chain of command, rather than playing the baseball game and kind of just hanging out with everyone and finishing touches and all that, I went and practiced with the band. The Broken Arrows did their third big performance. This was the second one at a big August event, but we did do FIT earlier in the year. And we got to practice in the World War II Museum. All the vehicles were our audience for that time, and honestly, I think the practice went particularly well. So we were ready and roaring for the performance later that day. We had a couple of opening acts, one from Dean Facca and one from Madonna Dolly. And then it was time for the Broken Arrows.
You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, yeah. We chased our pleasures here, dug our treasures there. Can you still recall the time we cried? Break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, yeah.
I took what we did that day as kind of a learning experience because listening back, there's definitely some things that I would want to improve on, want to change, at least for myself. However, in general, the band rocked it. Not only did we have a lot of fun and engage the crowd and got people singing and moving, but we did pretty darn well with our songs, in my opinion. It was a pretty big set list, and while it was ambitious, I think each of us rose to the occasion and performed with everything that we had. And if you haven't already, check us out on Instagram, The Broken Arrows Vietnam Band. And if you notice in the video, we had our own uniforms. It was really cool. Big props to Sabia for kind of pushing for that. We had custom patches, custom name tapes. It was really cool. We looked pretty snazzy in my opinion. Now, after that, it was time to relax. However, I'm going to give you guys some context as to when the event took place historically. So in early 1968, the 173rd was spread along the Ankei Pass. After they had suffered heavy casualties in prior engagements, they were spread along in sort of a defensive and clearing out position. Now, the Ankei Pass was a big roadway that connected major points of interest, so defending this and clearing it of Pavin forces was vital. Tet, which was the Vietnamese New Year, and as you guys should know, the Tet Offensive did take place during January of 1968. So while there was supposed to be a ceasefire, some North Vietnamese army forces actually attacked the day prior, which set some alarms off, but nothing too concerning. So you can bet that As we were just getting ready for a nice night, probably around 10 o'clock on that Thursday, the base got attacked. It started with a firework being sent right overhead, right above the base, and boom. So 2-1, who was my squad again this year, and I'll get a little bit more into that later, got all rallied up and we booked it to our defensive position. So we had been briefed prior to where we would be if something were to happen. So I got my guys over there. We laid out, we set that perimeter, and we held it for a bit. We got moved around a tiny bit. We ended up defending the front and then moving to the side. And then all of a sudden we heard screaming, "Medic!" Ah! So we booked it back over there, set up a perimeter around a casualty. They got picked up, moved to the med tent, and it was a fake casualty, kind of just for the immersion aspect, but it was pretty darn cool. And meanwhile, blank fire guns are going off around. There were fireworks flying overhead. We had flares going up. It was pretty darn cool. We got to stay in the foxholes that Dean Facca and others built in the earlier part of the week. It was really immersive and really cool just for everything to be like popping off and exploding. So huge props to those guys who put that part of the event on. Not only did it really like solidify that, oh my gosh, the Tet Offensive is happening, but it made for a really cool experience, especially because it was pitch black. We couldn't see anything except when the fireworks and stuff would explode around us. My squad this year was a little bit different, but nonetheless, it was the infamous 2-1 Oonga Boonga. So Oonga Boonga did occupy the cave this year, although it was a little bit lighter. We were missing not only our previous squad leader, Sean, who we did miss very much, but 2 of the people he was going to bring with him weren't able to come as well. So it was myself as the squad leader now. We had Mike Labasi as our ASL. We had Mike Ferrucci, Mooch, as we all know and love him. He was our machine gunner as always, with Freilish as his assistant machine gunner. And then we had Jaden Amabile, who left on Saturday morning. And lastly, we had Dean Facca, who was there the whole week, actually longer than I was there. And he dug all the holes. He put in a ton of work. He definitely took away some good things to learn this event, but he was a hard charger and it rewarded him in the end. So now that the Tet Offensive had begun, it was time for 2-1 to be ready to go into action. On Friday, we woke up and we did some training operations just to make sure everyone was on the same page. Second platoon definitely struggled with it a little bit. I know first platoon was rubbing it in our faces that they were all prepared, but 2-1 did decently well. I think a lot of what we messed up on and what we could improve on could be fixed if more people went to FIT, which is the field infantry training. So after that, we got ready to do our first big patrol out along the Dragon's Back. What was cool about this year's AO is that while the fighting did take place at the same place as last year, the actual base was at a different location. So we had to get trucked in, which was about a 30-minute ride, and then dropped off at an LZ where stuff could happen at any second. So as soon as we dropped onto that LZ, we pushed into the wood line and secured a perimeter around the LZ for the second chalk to come in, which was first platoon. Once all of us were there, we began our patrol around the area to secure a little bit more around the LZ. So at a point, second platoon was online, ready to push into the wood line up to a certain road. However, 2-1, which was the Oonga Boonga squad, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves, and we pushed well beyond where we were supposed to, way earlier than we were supposed to, and we ended up kind of getting lost. However, with a little bit of quick thinking and help from friends along the way, we ended up making it back to first platoon. Not long after we got reconnected with first platoon, Lieutenant and I, which was Mike Mueller, huge props to him, we were talking and he noticed a body in the wood line. That shouldn't be there, especially because it's in tan, so it's probably a pattern body. So I started yelling at him and I was threatening to shoot. And then all of a sudden, right out of the corner of my eye, kind of 10 feet to the left of where I was aiming, a guy stands up with his hands up in the air. I was not expecting him to be there. I made it look like I expected him to be there, but I had no idea he was hiding behind that tree. Turns out there were 2 enemy PAVN that were down right in front of me, and that's the body that we saw. However, there was another one still alive right next to us. So while it was good that we had our eyes out watching, they were right there and we had no idea. So I ended up pointing my gun at this guy. I was yelling, "Chuhoy," which means surrender, surrender. And we guided him out. He laid down. One of the first platoon squad leaders who was bomb trained, he was able to disarm and all that. He ended up searching him and he found a bunch of new booby traps that we had never seen before on this guy's person. So I would say that it was a collective win for 2-1 to kind of redeem ourselves after getting lost a little bit. So game-wise, just so they didn't get stuck with us the whole event, we sent them on their way back to their PAVN forces, and we continued our patrol back to the LZ. And as 2-1 is kind of spearheading it, pushing to the front and setting up a perimeter for the rest of the company to move alongside us, I noticed some guys creeping around the old LZ where we just were. So naturally, I yelled contact, and 2-1 opened up. We took a couple hits, no permanent casualties. First platoon kept going alongside us. Our sister squad, 2-2 Strassi Specials, they pushed in to reinforce us. We held back that PAVN ambush, and we did pretty darn well. Again, only taking a couple not permanent casualties, but that was a good engagement, and it was funny seeing one of my good friends from KVB, Johnny Bullfrog, him stand up after the engagement and run off. I guess we didn't hit him enough, but he ended up escaping after that one. So not long after that, we loaded back up onto the trucks and headed back to base for that night. And if you remember my AAR from last year, the night times were some of my favorite with Oonga Boonga. Unfortunately, a lot of guys did show up on Thursday and Friday, so we didn't really get any of those nights to really bond together this year. Although I will say Friday was a lot of fun. I had to set a bedtime for the squad because we were going to get up at 3 a.m. the next morning for a QRF engagement with the PAVN forces back in the field. But we had a lot of fun that night. Unfortunately, the string lights didn't work out as much as I'd hoped, but here's a quick video showing that. And then it was time for bed. Right before we went to bed, we were notified that wake up was no longer at 3 a.m. and instead at 5 a.m. So we did get a couple extra hours of sleep, which was a godsend, considering that we would be out in the field for over 24 hours the next day. So this brings us up to Saturday. On Saturday, we were ready for a full 24-hour in the field patrol. So the platoons loaded up into the trucks. We had our rucksacks with us fully loaded to the brim with enough to sustain us for that full 24 hours, and we headed out to the field. So morale was really high, but we were ready to fight because we knew that stuff would happen in this next 24-hour period. We patrolled a long way, and we ended up kind of along a riverbed, ready to just kind of bed down for a bit, kind of take a break, and wait for maybe PAVN to come by or to get some intelligence. So we dropped our rucksacks off. However, the captain pulled 2-1 up, and he gave us a special assignment to go locate a better place for us to remain overnight. So 2-1 with Sergeant Savia moved out and located a nice place for us to remain overnight. Now, whether or not this was the best place, I don't know, but I thought it was particularly okay because not only was it kind of backed by areas that no PAVN could come through, it was in a triangular form. So up top, we had the HQ elements, we had, along with 2-1, along the second tier below, we had 2-2, so that was second platoon, 2nd squad, which was a very full squad. And then at the very bottom, along the first defensive position, was 1st platoon. So once we located this area, we linked back up with the rest of the company, and all of us moved all of our rucksacks there, placed everything down, but we didn't bed down for the night. 1st platoon and 2nd platoon did separate patrols, so we started together, but we kind of branched off. 2-2 and 2-1, 2nd platoon, ended up moving a little bit further to the right and sweeping all around the field, where 1st platoon ended up cutting and kind of going towards the center of the field. Not long after we split off and kind of came up next to them, we hit contact right along the road, which was the Dragon's Back. That became a highly contested area, and the whole entire PAVN force was on one side of the road. We were on the other. We did try to get a couple pushes right across there. Strassi, he went down like nothing. They chopped him down real fast. So 2-2 was kind of left to their own devices. 2-1 was kind of stuck because we were holding a defensive area. So we were on the right side, protecting from any flanking. However, we didn't get too much action during that, which naturally kind of hurt the feelings of everyone in Oonga Boonga. But we held our own. We did pretty well, and we did end up pushing a little bit further in. Just to kind of cut off any movements that were parallel to us. Now, later that night, after that engagement, we ended up pulling back to our RON site, and we set up for the night. Prior to any fighting, Sergeant Sabian noticed a pathway that could lead straight to the HQ element. Now, we had guys watching that, so we weren't too concerned, especially because the easiest approach would to be just go straight forward into 1st platoon. So we were kind of waiting for that and setting up for that to happen, but we were ready for an attack that night. Around 9:30, grenades started exploding overhead. We had just kind of big pyro pieces launching, exploding, not far above us. Probably I'd give it like 20 feet above us. And in some cases they were off to the side or a little inaccurate, but relatively dialed in. So they knew that we were there and they had our positions pinpointed for attack. So now that they had our positions dialed in, at the crack of dawn, 5:15, as soon as that sun came up over the trees, someone yelled, "Grenade!" And funny story, we found out afterwards, that was like a nut that fell from a tree into his lap. But good for us, as soon as he yelled that, the entire Pavan force, which was right along our perimeter, attacked. They hit 2-2's position, they started hitting 2-1's position, and they kind of bypassed 1st Platoon entirely. So if you picture the triangle going this way, they were attacking right here. So you know that footpath that I had mentioned previously? That's where they were attacking from. They belly crawled right up to the other side of the berm that some of our 2-1 guys were on. They got schwacked immediately, and they started firing right up into us. There was one guy that was just sniping people, 1 shot, 1 kill. You could hear it. It was insane. Turned out to be Johnny Bullfrog, good KVB guy. It was really cool that he was attacking us because we couldn't figure out where he was. That was pretty fun and a pretty cool engagement, especially getting shot at by your friends. But wave after wave would attack us for about the next hour. They would start doing pushes over to try to get behind us. So they would sneak up, they would run, they'd book it, trying to get from cover to cover, and they ended up getting right on our side, almost behind us. And that wiped a lot of us out. If some of the 1st Platoon guys hadn't come up to reinforce us, it would have been a bloodbath. They would have descended right upon the rest of 2nd Platoon as well as 1st Platoon with their backs exposed. So thank goodness for the QRF that got their guys up there to help support us up in the HQ element. So again, as the onslaught happened, there was constant fighting back and forth. My trusty old G&P M16 stopped working pretty much entirely. It kept jamming up in the barrel. I did try to upgrade it. I put a nice flat hop in it. I didn't break it in. I didn't test it at all, which was a huge rookie mistake on my part. I trusted myself enough to not have issues, but sure enough, it started having issues, as well as the trigger response being really sluggish. So this thing will be getting an internal overhaul not too long from now. Stay tuned for that. But this thing stopped working, so I was kind of running around just trying to support people. Fralish lent me his gun a few times. I ended up cutting some wire and shoving it down the barrel just to unjam it. It was rough, but in the end, this thing pulled through. But I did not get to fight as much as I had wanted to. Regardless, that engagement was probably one of my favorite Airsoft engagements that I've almost ever been in. Not only was it an extremely well-coordinated attack, however, it was just a good long fight. You know, typically Airsoft battles last 5 minutes and you go back to respawn and you meet up in the same location. No, in this case, it was a very well-coordinated, full kind of sweep. They came up behind us, they were in front of us, they had a guy with oversight shooting at us from places that we couldn't find. It was just really well done, and I enjoyed that part of it. So after that engagement, after we held them off and they ended up falling back, we got prepped to do one more big mission. Along one of the further roadways was a supposed minefield. So 2-1 held security, while 1st Platoon ended up kind of sweeping the mine area, and then we all pushed through, met up at a point, and we were going to engage them one more time in that highly contested area. As soon as we got there, though, we ended up seeing them walk up the road, because I guess they had considered it Endex. I'm not exactly sure what happened to that, but that was kind of the end of the event right then and there. A little bit anticlimactic, but that morning fight made up for any kind of lack of fighting that there ever was. And again, there wasn't really. We kind of had fighting at every single engagement that we were in, with the exception of that last one, really. So then and there, Liam called Endex, and we gathered around to do an AAR. Again, while this AO, if you remember my last one, it wasn't my favorite, I think how we utilized it this year was incredible. I enjoyed it. I didn't really know where I was a lot of the time, even though I had been there prior. Kind of got mixed up and turned around, but by the end of the event, I kind of had a mental map. It was really cool, though, just to be able to experience something that wasn't necessarily new, but in a new way. And of course, I do hope that we get to explore a different venue next year. However, I wouldn't necessarily be disappointed anymore if we went back to this one and we used it in a similar way. Now it was time for the awards of the event, and I do want to say I'm really proud of Unga Bunga. We ended up taking home the majority of the awards. We did well enough to get recognized. Mike Labasi had the Come Correct Award. Not only was his hair fantastic the entire event, but he was on it in character, doing well on patrols, crushing it on point the entire time, as well as maintaining garbage. I know that was kind of my responsibility in the beginning of the week, but as soon as he got there, every time I went and looked, it was done. It was already, the job was finished. So he was a really top tier dude. I couldn't ask for a better ASL and point man. He really crushed it. So huge props to him. We also had Dean Facca. So I know I had mentioned this was Dean Facca's second event and first time really in a combat role. So he did have a lot of takeaways. We talked post-event. But he also did really well. He pushed really hard in the beginning of the week, setting up the base. So he did get the Hard Charger Award. And this other one, I'm not sure if it's an honor or a curse. He did get Mooch of the Year Award, which was an award that you would expect Mike Ferrucci to get. However, I think Facca's pined for his job because we would catch him sneaking chips and everything in the kitchen, trying to make himself an extra sandwich. Anytime any food was even around or opened, it was like Spidey senses went off and he was there. So we kind of gave him crap for that, but he definitely worked off all the food that he ate. And then last, I was honored to get this one yet again, and that was the 2nd Platoon MVP. So this was my first time squad leading at a Broken Arrow event, particularly an August event. And 2-1 is not always an easy one to kind of wrangle in, but I was really lucky to have worked with these guys so many times before, and I thoroughly enjoyed just being with them. They're all my good friends. So to be able to get a little bit of recognition for working well with them and helping the squad become successful, that was an honor. So I do really appreciate that. So now, all that being said, I want to give just a couple overall thoughts about the event, what I would do differently for myself, as well as what I am looking forward to maintaining in the future. I think getting there early, while it did wear me out a lot by the end of the event, I think that was a necessity. And especially for guys on staff, especially guys who want to be involved with the Bay community, they need to get there as early as possible. It was sub 10 guys, just in general staff, not including support company, that were there until about Wednesday. So a very small percentage did a massive percentage of the work, and that definitely took a toll on us. A lot of us were tired and cranky at some points during the week. So I think maintaining that is a must for me, as well as staying late. So we ended up taking down a little bit later than we started last year. So we went kind of until about the same time. I left at about 3:10. At about 3:30, I think I saw that most of the area was at least cleaned up and everything was packed up for the majority. So making sure that not only people stay late to help, but actually put in the work when they stay late to help, I think makes things go so much faster. I think takedown was definitely an improvement after last year. So I think maintaining that is something that not only goes for myself, but for the community as well. I think the amount of equipment I brought definitely needs to be downsized a tiny bit. If not downsized, streamlined. Today is what? As I'm recording this, it's Friday. And I got back from the event on Sunday night. And I just finished unpacking my car last night. And not even cleaning up my storage area. So I think downsizing and making more efficient the things that I do bring is a must for me. Mainly making sure that I have everything I need. And if someone else needs something, I can give it to them. But in a way that is easy to pack in and pack out. And one more thing I would change is how I squad lead. So next year, I don't think I'm going to be squad leader, assuming Sean comes back, which I hope he does. We definitely missed him this year. He was a huge part of our Unga to our Bunga. So hopefully he does come back. But if he doesn't and I do squad lead, I want to give my guys a little bit more autonomy. So I kind of took a page out of Sean's book in that I would help position people to where they'd be most effective. And I think that next year being our 4th year as Unga Bunga, as 2-1, I think I got to trust these guys a little bit more to know what they're doing, because they do. So I did notice myself micromanaging a little bit and kind of saying, hey, you go there, you go there, you go there. I think I want to let them try it out because while this event is supposed to replicate actual combat and we are supposed to take it as life and death, I think letting guys kind of exercise their own thought is something that I need to improve on. I definitely had my hands a little bit too much into what my guys were doing in terms of the combat. Now, on the opposite side of that, I did check in with my guys a ton. I didn't mention this previously, but a lot of guys had physical ailments. They weren't all feeling 100%. So everyone was down with something, but I did check in with my guys a ton. I really do care about them as people more than as like soldiers. So making sure that they're okay is something that I did try to do a lot. But the steps to make sure they're okay is something I can improve on as well. Making sure they're all drinking enough, making sure they eat, bringing food for them so they can eat if they do forget stuff. Just little things like that, making sure that their health is as tip-top as it can be, on top of them making sure that they're okay themselves. And last but certainly not least, make sure my gun works as well as my mags. I dealt with so many jamming issues, especially in that last engagement. So just making sure my gear is tip-top and good condition as it can be going into this. I know it's a rookie mistake, but I guess as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I trusted my stuff so much that I just threw it in there, and I think I paid a little bit for it. So far, I have been to 3 big August Broken Arrow events. My first one was Oregon Trail in 2021. My second one was Junction City 2 last year in 2022. And this year, 2023, it was Dragon's Back. It's very tough to rate them in order of my favorite to least favorite because truthfully, I do enjoy all of them for different aspects. So I wouldn't say that if it is third place, it's the worst. It's definitely something that I thoroughly enjoyed, but not as much as the other ones for whatever reason. So in terms of actual enjoyment of the entire event, I would definitely put Junction City 2 as my favorite event in that category. In terms of combat, I would say that this Dragon's Back definitely takes the cake. And in terms of pre-event kind of morale and excitement, I'd say that Oregon Trail was my favorite. But in general, I would rank this one at number 2. Dragon's Back, I'd say, was middle of the road in terms of which were my favorite parts of it. Not in saying that it was bad in any way, shape, or form, because I only have great things to say about it, but I would say Junction City 2 takes the cake for me. So if you're looking for a way to get involved in Broken Arrow events, you've attended them, you want to kind of take the next step, help out. Do the early show up. Leave late. Try to assist in any way, shape, or form. Contact Liam or any of the staff guys and say, hey, I'd love to try this at an event. That's something that I can tell really adds to the event when people come with their own contributions. Like Mike Mueller this year, on top of being a stellar staff member and lieutenant, he ended up brewing his own beer. He called it Tiger Piss. It was interesting, but he made it himself and he brought it to the event. So there's a lot of different ways, and a lot of it can be personality that you can bring to an event in addition to staying and coming early. So all in all, I do want to give a huge shout out to the rest of Bay staff. It's awesome being in a cohort with you guys. I appreciate you, and I so look forward to everything that we do in the future. Thank you guys for checking out this video. This is the Gear Locker. Come period correct, and we'll see you in the next one.